Dr. Lindsay Rogers, and Mr. D.J. Hatchett. Tori Pittman, Mr. DeSantos' friend and employer, will explain how Storm Chase was negligent in their very course and safety protocols, including that the team supervisor that Storm Chase hired was hardly present during the race at all. She'll also explain how there is a severe lack of information regarding Storm Chase's advertised flag system. She'll explain how the course was extremely overcrowded, and finally, how the scene of Mr. DeSantos' accident was in complete chaos, causing inexcusable delays in the crucial minutes after his disappearance. Next, we will call Dr. Lindsay Rogers to the stand. Dr. Rogers was the on-site medical coordinator for this Storm Chase race. He will testify that as an emergency room physician, he raised concerns to Storm Chase, pointing out the inadequacy of the team monitor's training and how this training did not meet up with the standard of emergency response in the state of Idaho. He will explain that he raised specific concerns about the abandoned ship, the very obstacle which Mr. DeSantos drowned at. And finally, he will explain how the scene of Mr. DeSantos' accident was without leadership. You will hear how no prudent person could call this race safe. And finally, you'll hear the testimony of an obstacle course expert, Mr. D.J. Hatchett. Mr. Hatchett will elaborate on the course, the day of the race, and explain how it was riddled with hazards that Storm Chase knew for years, yet did nothing to fix. He'll explain that he had warned Storm Chase for 10 plus years about these very risks, and yet Storm Chase did not conduct themselves in the same way anyone of ordinary prudence would in the same circumstances. Storm Chase made their profits at the price of their people. Mr. DeSantos was forced to pay the price of Storm Chase's negligence with his life. And that is why at the end of today's trial, my co-counsel, Mr. Miller, will ask you a question. Did Storm Chase fulfill their duty? Storm Chase had a duty to provide reasonable care, provide reasonable safety precautions, and minimize unreasonable risk. Did they fulfill this duty? If your answer be no to any of these questions, you must rule in favor. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Opening argument on behalf of the defense.
Yes, Your Honor, but before I proceed, I would like to say that had I been allowed to object, would have objected to argumentative as far as the claims that the Storm Chase chose profits over the people.
You may.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury. I apologize for my voice. Members of the jury, today's case is a case of choices. Every day, every person here makes a choice, and these choices create the lives we live. Our story begins when Kristen Heston made the choice to start Storm Chase, a company that designs and hosts competitive events called obstacle course races, or OCRs for short. And while Storm Chase events are designed to be fun and adrenaline-inducing, they were never designed to be anything but safe. Clear back in February of 2022, Storm Chase made the choice to host an event at Lizard View out in Canyon County, Idaho. In preparation for this event, they hosted several meetings with local government officials and medical professionals in order to ensure a safe experience for everyone. Then, in October of 2022, Tori Pittman, the CEO of TV Island, made the choice to sign up a team for this event. This team included all 100 of DeSantos. Let's flash forward a few weeks to the day of the event, October 23rd, 2022. The day started out in high spirits, with the TV Island team making the choice to drink alcohol with breakfast and to dress as log turtles with dark shells the color of mud. Every team that joins a Storm Chase event is assigned a team monitor. The TV Island team was assigned Nancy Cameron. And despite the fact that her team often started late and unprepared, Miss Cameron still did everything she could to ensure a safe experience for everything. Things were going smoothly until one of the obstacles, called Cyclone, when Mr. DeSantos took a hit on the head. And yet, despite this, Mr. DeSantos made the choice to continue running. The next important obstacle is the obstacle we'll be focusing most on today, and that is the abandoned ship obstacle. Abandoned ship features a 15-foot climb up to a platform, off of which you jump into cold water and then swim about 50 feet to the other side. TV Island team made it to this obstacle, there was a red flag in the air, signaling to participants to not jump. And yet, despite this blatant warning, Mr. DeSopios still made the choice to jump. Shortly after, Devin Cody, the director of competitor safety and the lifeguard on duty at the time, was alerted that there was a participant missing. And as soon as she was alerted, Ms. Cody immediately initiated an evacuation of the pool. She then dove in and was able to bring an unconscious Alejandro DeSopios to the surface. She and Dr. Lindsay Rogers then worked together to get Mr. DeSopios' heart started. He was then transported to a local ER, where he was unfortunately found to be brain dead. His family made the difficult decision to take him off of life support the very next day. Today, you will hear from 3 defense witnesses. First, you will hear from Izzy Cameron about the choices Mr. DeSopios made that put him in the dangerous situation he found himself in. Second, you will hear from Devin Cody about the prioritization of safety and the effectiveness of storm chases medical protocols. Finally, you will hear from Chris Tempesto about the ways in which storm chase followed all safety guidelines. Additionally, you will hear from 3 plaintiff witnesses. First, we expect Tori Damon to testify to the 4 separate ways in which participants were warned of the dangers of the storm chase event. Second, we expect you to hear from DJ Hatch the ways in which storm chase followed all safety guidelines. And finally, we expect you to hear from Dr. Lindsay Rogers the effectiveness of storm chase's medical protocols. The burden of proof in today's trial is beyond the preponderance of the evidence. What this means is that the plaintiff only needs to prove their case to be slightly or likely. However, if at the end of today's trial you cannot confidently say this, then you must side with the defense. Today we will prove that Mr. DeSopios assumed the risk of death by signing the waiver. What this means, in accordance with jury instruction number 9, is that Mr. DeSopios signed the waiver knowingly and voluntarily, that this waiver disclosed the risk of death, and that by signing the waiver, Mr. DeSopios assumed that risk of death. Today, the plaintiff is going to try to say that storm chase was reckless and negligent. However, we expect you will hear anything but that. And at the end of today's trial, we will ask you to find storm chase, not negligent. Thank you.
Thank you. Plaintiff, ready to call its first witness.
Yes, Your Honor. Plaintiff calls Tori Damon to the stand. Your Honor,
Me?
please state your name and age for the court.
My name is Tori Damon, and I'm 36 years old.
What do you do for a living?
I own and am the CEO of my own company, TV Island. We're a small public relations firm based right here in Boise.
And how does this company promote itself?
We like to do a lot of outside of work athletic activities together to promote ourselves, such as mud runs, athletic events, and recently we were actually invited to compete in the storm chase obstacle course race.
Did you know Mr. DeSopios, Ms. Damon?
I did, yes.
How did you know?
He was our top public relations expert at TV Island. He was also a close personal friend. So he was just a big guy with a big heart and a big personality. We all loved him at TV Island.
Now let's talk about the storm chase race. What was it advertised as?
It was advertised on the website when they reached out to us that it was an extreme sports obstacle course race, about 12 miles long.
And what sort of obstacles did it have?
It had everything you could think of. I mean, it had electrical obstacles right next to these ice water obstacles. There were fire obstacles, obstacles with mud you had to swim through, even live animals.
Now let's talk a little bit about pre-race. What did you have to do before starting?
We got there a few minutes late, but our guide monitor, Izzy Cameron, still decided to let us join. And I thought we were going to get some sort of safety briefing or something, but he just started rattling these instructions off of the car.
And what were these instructions about?
I don't remember any of them being actually that useful. They really just seemed like theater to me. The only instruction I do recall is that we were allowed to skip obstacles if we felt the need.
Now, let's talk about this race after it started. What was it like?
I mean, as soon as it started, I was getting shoved, pushed around. People were cutting in line, yelling. People were getting injured all around me. And it was very, very crowded on the course.
Can you explain what you mean by crowded?
Well, there were a lot of participants in our specific time slot, but there were also a lot of people on the course that just looked different.
Can you what do you mean by different?
All the official race participants have received these race bibs and Sharpie marks on our foreheads, but a mile or two in, I noticed people joining that didn't have race bibs, or they had weird colors, Sharpie marks, weird number combinations. They just didn't look like the other participants.
And were these people just watching?
No, they were also using the obstacles too, cutting in line. I would have asked Sissy Cameron about it, but I rarely saw her throughout the entire race.
And how were the actual contestants behaving throughout all this?
As I said before, people were cutting in line, yelling at each other. It just felt out of control, like there was no one you could go to for help or any organization.
Now, how was your team doing throughout all this?
Not well. All 5 of us were injured at some point in the race.
Now, you mentioned previously that you had the ability to skip obstacles. Did you ever have to take advantage of this rule?
We tried to once.
You tried to. What happened?
At this electrical obstacle, Big Al, he was our team lead, and he tried to lead us around the obstacle. But that monitor stopped us and led us back and made us complete this obstacle.
Did you try to skip any obstacles later in the race?
After that, we didn't even try.
Now, was there any obstacle that stood out to you as being dangerous?
I would say abandoned ship.
Can you describe abandoned ship here?
Abandoned ship, you would come up to this 20-foot rope wall, and you'd have to climb all the way to the top, and there's a very narrow platform just open up in the air that everyone had to wait on. There was a plank coming off of it, and theoretically, one by one, racers were supposed to jump off the 20 to 25 feet into this deep, muddy, icy water and swim 50 feet to the other side and get out.
Now, how deep was this water?
Every time people jumped in, they went under a few seconds, so very, very deep.
What happened when your team reached this obstacle?
We all got struggled getting up the ropes. It was very slippery, and there were a lot of people. But once we got to the top, it was absolute chaos.
Can you explain what you mean by chaos?
Well, there were a lot of people, pushing each other, jostling one another in this open platform, 20 feet in the air. People were jumping off whenever they felt like it. There was no actual sign of who was supposed to jump next, and it was extremely loud.
Why was it loud?
Storm Chase had put these huge speakers at the top of the obstacle, blasting music, so, I couldn't hear anything.
Was anyone trying to control this?
I saw one monitor at the top. She was just holding a red flag, and I didn't even know what that meant.
Now, who from your team jumped first for themselves?
2 of my teammates, Jenny and Ray, jumped, and I saw them make it safely to the other obstacle, or the other side of the obstacle. Katie and Big Al were waiting for people to clear the water before they jumped so it could be safe, but they were getting pushed around more than any of us, so they decided to jump as well.
What happened when Big Al jumped?
Katie made it to the other side safely, but I didn't see Big Al jump or resurface.
Did you try to get help for Mr. Softles?
Well, another teammate and I noticed that Big Al was missing, and so we started yelling and stayed with the lifeguard, but the lifeguard wasn't doing anything. Finally, I just had to meet up with my team on the ground, and we waited for something to happen.
Do you know what happened to all 100 Softles?
Yes.
What happened?
Well, finally, we got the monitor and the lifeguard's attention, and they tried to stop people from jumping, but initially they couldn't. Finally, they stopped people from climbing up the obstacle, and then Deb and Cody, the lifeguard, walked over to our team and asked us if anyone was missing. We had to explain everything to him quickly again until he finally started diving and looking for Big Al.
Did you recover all 100 Softles?
It took him a few dives, but he finally brought Big Al to the surface.
What happened next?
When he brought him up, Big Al wasn't breathing, so he had to start performing CPR on him, and they brought an ambulance and took him away to the hospital.
What happened next?
I learned later that Big gal died in the hospital.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
All right. All right, we need to take a short recess to apparently turn on the microphones for the live stream. So. Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Can you hear me all right, Ms. Damon?
Yes.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
Ms. Damon, you thought Mr. DeSofios was a bit competitive, wouldn't you?
I would say he was the most competitive player at our company. That's actually the reason we chose him to be our team leader.
And this competitive nature conflicted with the nature of TD Island, correct?
I wouldn't put it that way, no.
Ms. Damon, one of the reasons you wanted to compete in the Storm Chase event was to impress corporate executives. Is that correct?
Well, actually, Storm Chase had reached out to us as a company, invited us to compete, and we knew it would be good for publicity, so we decided to agree and come.
And in fact, Ms. Damon, you thought this event would be a big PR boost for your company. Is that correct?
Actually, I thought just competing in the event would get us good publicity.
And you and Mr. DeSofios specifically wanted to make a good time in order to impress the corporate executives. Is that correct?
Obviously, we wanted a good time, but that wasn't the point.
Ms. Damon, before competing in this event, you had to sign a waiver, correct?
Yes, there was a waiver online that we had to sign.
And this waiver was a bit more complicated than other waivers you'd signed.
It was very long.
To your knowledge, both you and your entire team had to sign this waiver, correct?
Correct, yes.
And to your knowledge, everyone participating in the Storm Chase event had to sign this waiver.
I would assume so, yes.
Let the record reflect that I'm approaching opposing counsel with what has previously been marked as Exhibit 2.
All right.
May I approach the witness?
You may.
Ms. Damon, what is this?
This is the waiver.
And does it appear to be a fair and accurate copy?
I believe so, yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I move that Exhibit 2 be entered into evidence.
Any objection to the admission of Exhibit 2 into evidence?
None, Your Honor.
All right, Exhibit 2 will be admitted without objection.
Ms. Damon, would you please read, starting from in summation, right there, to the bolded down there?
Yes. In summation, the SC event is a hazardous activity that presents the ultimate physical and mental challenges to participants. I acknowledge that the SC event is an extreme test of my physical and mental limits that carries with it inherent risks of physical injury.
So, Ms. Damon, to clarify, this waiver warned you of the dangers involved in the Storm Chase event, correct?
Yes, we knew there were risks involved, but we also counted on Storm Chase for keeping us safe throughout the race.
Would you now please turn to the 4th page of this waiver?
Okay.
And would you read that last bullet point for the jury?
Yes. I acknowledge that Storm Chase LLC has instituted its rules for the protection of the participants and co-participants, I agreed to familiarize myself with those rules and follow them throughout the event. I also recognize the authority of Storm Chase LLC to halt my participation and, if necessary, have me removed from the premises if my participation, conduct, or presence endangers myself or my co-participants.
So, Ms. Damon, to clarify, it was your job to understand the rules of the event.
I believe that Storm Chase gave us rules, and we did listen to them, yes.
Ms. Damon, close to the beginning of the race, Izzy Cameron, your course monitor, read the do's and don'ts of the race.
Izzy Cameron read off some instructions, yes.
And you additionally had to sign a pledge before competing in this event.
There was a pledge.
And did your whole team have to sign this pledge?
I believe so, yes.
Let the record reflect that I am approaching opposing counsel with what has previously been marked as Exhibit 3. May I approach the witness?
You may.
Ms. Damon, what is this?
This is the pledge.
And does it appear to be a fair and accurate copy of that pledge?
I believe so, yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I move that Exhibit 3 be entered into evidence.
Any objection to the admission of Exhibit 3?
None, Your Honor.
All right, Exhibit 3 will also be admitted without objection.
Ms. Damon, would you please read the third bullet point on that pledge?
Yes, I understand that this is not a race, but a personal challenge to overcome obstacles put in my way.
So, Ms. Damon, despite this, your team still took the event as a race.
I still wouldn't put it that way. We wanted a good time, and Storm Chase was timing teams. They had a huge leaderboard with all of the times. It did feel like a race, I believe, during the actual event, but that wasn't the reason we were actually competing in this event.
But to clarify, based on those feelings, your team still took it as a race, correct?
It felt like a race, yes.
And would you now please read the sixth bullet point for the jury?
By signing this pledge, I agree to proceed at my own risk. All risks are assumed by me, the participant.
So, Ms. Damon, through that pledge, you were additionally warned of the risks involved in Storm Chase, correct?
Yes, we knew that there were risks involved.
Ms. Damon, before the event, your team drank some alcohol with breakfast, correct?
Around 4 hours before the event, we had each had a Bloody Mary with our breakfast.
Ms. Damon, around the course as you were competing, you saw signs warning of the dangers of the course. Is that correct?
There were signs, yes.
Ms. Damon, we're now going to talk about the abandoned ship obstacle. To start, towards the end of the race, your whole team was struggling, correct?
Yeah, abandoned ship was one of the very last obstacles, and at this point we were all exhausted and dehydrated.
And Mr. DeSofios was struggling in particular.
He struggled getting up the ropes, yes, they were very slippery.
And at one point, Mr. DeSofios had taken a hit on the head, right?
I do believe early in the race he bumped his head at one point.
And you had seen him get up and run in the wrong direction, is that correct?
He had fallen off this spinning cyclone monkey bars wheel, so when he fell off, he began running in the wrong direction for a second, but began the race after that.
And Ms. Damon, at this point, you asked Mr. DeSofios if he wanted to bail, isn't that correct?
I asked him if he wanted a few extra minutes at the breaks that we had been taking water tents around the course, but he said he was fine.
So to clarify, you left this decision up to someone who had recently hit his head.
Big Al was our team lead, and so he made all of the decisions for our team.
And you additionally left this decision up to your team lead who had run in the wrong direction.
He had run in the wrong direction for just a second, but yes, we left the decision up to our team leader.
When you made it to the abandoned ship obstacle, there was a red flag in the air, correct?
Yeah, I saw the monitor holding a red flag.
And despite this red flag, your team's, Mr. DeSofios still jumped in.
I didn't even know what the red flag meant. It wasn't explained to us in instructions, but he did jump at one point.
And Ms. Damon, you never jumped in, did you?
No, I didn't.
And Mr. DeSofios still made the choice to jump in, correct?
Yeah, that was essentially the only way to get off the obstacle.
But he consciously made the choice to jump in, correct?
Yes, he made the choice.
Thank you. No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any redirect? All right. May this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
And,
Plaintiff calls Lindsay Rogers to the stand.
all right.
May I proceed?
You may.
Please state your name and occupation for the court.
My name is Dr. Lindsay Rogers, and I'm a board-certified emergency room physician.
As a physician, what kind of education do you have?
I got my pre-med degree at the University of Idaho and then went on to finish my education at the University of Washington. I then went on to specialize in emergency medicine as a physician also at the University of Washington.
Why are you here today?
I was the medical coordinator for the storm chase event hosted at Lizard Butte in October of 2022.
When did you first hear of Storm Chase?
My ER director recommended me to attend a meeting between a couple of the storm chase leaders in the county recreational department. The department had to approve the race for it to even happen, and so there were several engineering and safety and medical concerns which were discussed at this meeting.
You mentioned that you were the medical coordinator for the day of the event. When did you get this job?
I was invited to attend a walkthrough in early October of 22 to view not only the preparations for the emergency medical services on site, but several of the safety and medical features for the obstacles. It was at this walkthrough that I accepted the position as the medical coordinator after being approached by Kristen Pesto.
So you mentioned that you were at this walkthrough to observe obstacles. What specific details did you observe?
Well, one of the obstacles, abandoned ship, posed a great deal of hazard to participants. There was the small landing area and the complete lack of lane dividers in the
Objection,
water.
Your Honor, is to speculation.
Response?
Your Honor, sufficient foundation has been laid that this witness has much experience in the area of safety, and this is the reason that he was at this course in the first place, was to inspect the safety of the physical before he can testify as to the safety of this obstacle.
Anything further on the objection?
Yes, Your Honor, I believe that this witness was specifically talking about the structure of an obstacle, and this witness's expertise is specifically in medical safety, not just safety in general. Therefore, I believe that this is outside of this witness's expertise to talk about the structure itself.
I think the witness can talk about his personal observations about the structure itself, so I will overrule the objection, but you can certainly inquire on cross-examination if he has any expertise that would qualify him to talk about its safety.
So what details did you notice about abandoned ship?
Well, the small landing area and the complete lack of lane dividers greatly increased the risk to participants in that they could fall on each other. And then they had dug this deep pit right below the obstacle and filled it with muddy water, which would completely inhibit any medical personnel in his or her attempt to rescue an injured participant.
Did you say anything to Storm Chase about these concerns?
Yeah, I wouldn't be much of a physician if I didn't, so I compiled a list of all my concerns and emailed them to Devin Cody. The abandoned ship was one of the top things.
What were some of the other things on this list?
Well, from a meeting that I had discussed with Kristen Pesto and Devin Cody, they were still completely understaffed when it came to medical personnel, and they needed to add more triage tents to the course.
Did Devin Cody respond to your email?
He did, yes.
How did he respond?
He said they had it under control and called it old hat, that they'd done this before. His response gave me no confidence that they would adhere to any of the safety or medical details which I had given them.
Let's talk about the day of the race. What happened when you first arrived at the course?
When I first arrived, Kristen Pesto was giving what can only be described as a pep talk to her employees. She said the race had to go on at all costs, and if it didn't, it could spell financial ruin for her company.
And where were you during the race?
As the medical coordinator, it is my job to coordinate between the different triage tents stationed around the course and make sure that participants were getting adequate medical care.
What would happen if a serious injury were to occur during the race?
I would get a call over the radio.
Did you get any such calls?
Yes, I got a code blue or unconscious racer at abandoned ship, so I immediately dropped what I was doing and rushed over to help.
What was the situation like at abandoned ship when you arrived?
It was utter chaos and poor management all around.
What do you mean by chaos?
When I got there, Devin Cody had only just dragged Mr. DeSofios' body out of the water, and he started to perform CPR. But he completely forgot about the mouth-to-mouth, which is vital in providing oxygen to a participant who has been deprived of it. While this was all happening, participants were shockingly still diving into the pool below.
What steps did you take when you arrived?
Well, I went over, I checked for a pulse, and we had to use an AED on the patient.
And what happened after that?
He was loaded into an ambulance and moved to the local hospital.
What happened to him next?
We had to move him into the intensive care unit, and we put him on both a cardiac monitor and a ventilator, and we were able to run some tests on Mr. DeSofios.
What were the results of these tests?
The patient was brain dead.
Based on these tests, and in your capacity as a medical professional, how long was Mr. DeSofios without oxygen?
Due to the lack of brain function found in Mr. DeSofios, he would have had to have been without oxygen for at least 3 minutes, but most likely 4.
Was Mr. DeSofios the only serious injury that day?
No, he was not.
Your Honor, I ask that I may be allowed to approach the witness with what has been marked as Exhibit 9.
You may. Do you want to show it to opposing counsel first?
Let the record reflect, I'm showing opposing counsel Exhibit 9. Mr. Cody, do you recognize this document?
Yes, this is the on-course medical tent treatment log summary.
How do you recognize it?
Each triage tent is responsible for recording and treating each injury that they take care of on the day of the race. So they compile these lists at the end of the race.
And when did you compile these lists?
Well, as a medical coordinator, it's part of my job to compile a list of all the injuries. So we did this at the end of the race.
Your Honor, I ask that Exhibit 9 may be entered into evidence.
Any objection to the admission of Exhibit 9?
None, Your Honor.
All right, Exhibit 9 will be admitted without objection.
About how many injuries are shown on this document?
There are over 500 injuries listed here.
And are these results surprising?
No, they are not.
Why not?
Well, after the intense amount of precautions that I gave both Kristen Pesto and Devin Cody, it's no shock that this amount of participants were injured since they didn't adhere to my warnings.
Objection, Your Honor, as to unfairly prejudicial.
Response?
Your Honor, I would ask that opposing counsel will explain this objection.
Any further argument on why it is unfairly prejudicial?
Yes, Your Honor. I was specifically objecting to the word it was no surprise. I believe that this phrase is meant to naturally dispose the jury to dislike my client, and so therefore I would ask that this specific wording be stricken from the record.
Any response to that explanation?
Yes, Your Honor. This witness was merely testifying to his own opinion on why over 500 injuries were sustained in the storm chase race.
I'm going to overrule the objection.
So why are these results not surprising?
Well, I warned Kristen Pesto and Devin Cody over and over again, and they didn't adhere to any of them. So it's no shock that this amount of participants were injured.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
All right, cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Permission to proceed? Dr. Rogers, your current job is an ER physician, correct?
Emergency medical physician, yes.
And you have had around 12 years of training, haven't you?
Give or take, yes.
And yet your 3-year residency took you 4.5 years to complete, is that right?
It did, that is correct, yes.
What led to that lengthy delay?
This delay in my residency would have had to have happened just for a number of instances. One of them because of a previous incident that was currently being cleared up from a previous crime.
And Dr. Rogers, this crime was that you were convicted of a drug-related felony, yes?
Objection, Your Honor. Improper character evidence.
Response?
Your Honor, pertinent to Rule 404A3, this question is meant to better inform the trier of fact, to weigh the credibility and veracity of this witness. Therefore, I believe that for the specific purpose of veracity that this testimony is not unfairly prejudicial.
Response to the 404?
Your Honor, in this case, this testimony is not being offered for the truthfulness or untruthfulness of the witness, and therefore it does not fall under that exception.
Any response to that?
Once more, Your Honor, I am offering this simply for the sake of veracity, and I won't be getting into the specific details of this crime, merely just that this witness was in fact convicted at one point within the past 10 years.
May I respond, Your Honor?
You may.
Your Honor, that conviction has nothing to do with the veracity of this witness.
Any response to that?
Once more, Your Honor, I would say that as this witness previously described a prior incident, that I was just clarifying to the jury pertinent to Rule 609 to actually have this witness admit what this specific instance was. And within the past 10 years, as long as the witness is not a defendant, it is allowed to be brought up in trial.
May I respond, Your Honor?
I'm going to sustain the objection.
Dr. Rogers, in February, you attended a meeting that included a state recreation commissioner, correct?
Yes, the county recreational department.
And the recreation commissioner is a government official that would have to approve the storm chase race, correct?
Correct, that's why we had the meeting.
And it was at this meeting that you were able to address some of your medical concerns, weren't you?
Well, my ER director recommended me as a subject matter expert to both the county, so I was there at the meeting to make sure that the obstacle and the course would be conducted in a safe manner.
And yet, even after hearing all of your concerns and recommendations, the recreational commissioner still deemed the staffing levels to be okay, didn't they?
At this meeting, I was able to raise some concerns, the medical tents and the complete lack of medical personnel. And so after they had
Dr. Rogers,
warned me
I
that,
wasn't asking about what you discussed at this meeting. The recreational commissioner still deemed the staffing levels to be okay, didn't they?
Devin, Cody, and Kristen Pesto had to say that they would implement some of my medical concerns, but they did approve of the race in the end.
Dr. Rogers, I would now like to talk about your involvement after this meeting. You mentioned on direct that you were invited by Storm Chase to do a medical walkthrough of the course, weren't you?
Correct. I was there to view the on-site preparations for the emergency medical services of the race.
And you saw Storm Chase's training for medical personnel, didn't you?
Yeah, they were just lounging around having donuts. It didn't seem very official.
And after you saw this, you were planning on filing a formal complaint with the county, weren't you?
I don't completely recall if I'm correct. Just based off the training that they had, it didn't look like they were taking it seriously enough. And as EMTs, this sort of training for an excessive obstacle course needs to be done in a serious manner.
Dr. Rogers, you were planning on filing a formal complaint with the county, weren't you?
It was that serious, yes.
And after your concerns and recommendations, Chris Tempesto still hired you on the spot, didn't he?
It was kind of weird. I'd just given Kristen Pesto a huge list of all of my concerns, yet she still wanted to hire me.
So that's a yes to my question, he hired you?
Yes, he did, yes.
But you accepted his offer, didn't you?
After viewing all of the dangers that the obstacles could pose to the participants, I knew it was going to be only a matter of time before someone was going to be injured. So I stayed on to be there for when that happened.
But Dr. Rogers, you accepted his offer, yes?
Yes, so that way I could help participants.
And you were under contract for $1,000, weren't you?
Yes, but it doesn't matter what I was contracted under. I still needed to be there to save the participants. It's the participants who matter in this obstacle.
Dr. Rogers, was the money more important than the safety?
Absolutely not. Our concern should always be the safety of the participants in the race.
But you never followed through with your formal complaint after you were offered this job, did you?
This is my formal complaint today. Loans be darned, I need to clear my conscience. This race was dangerous to the participants.
So that's a yes to my question. You never filed the complaint, did you?
The previous complaint? No, but the race was still dangerous.
Dr. Rogers, you've talked a lot about how you thought this course was inadequate. But the walkthrough was 3 days prior to the race, yes?
Yes, it was 3 days prior, but they still hadn't hired more medical personnel.
But all of the obstacles had already been built, yes?
The obstacles had been built, and I couldn't testify to the engineering aspect of them, but they still had a couple safety and medical concerns which they posed.
But Dr. Rogers, in the span of those 3 days, what suggestions to the obstacles, none of the obstacles themselves could have been changed within that 3 days.
I'm not aware of this. I was only the medical coordinator. That probably would have been up to Kristen Pesto. My job as the coordinator was to inform both Kristen Pesto and Devin Cody of the hazards that they could pose to participants, and I did my job.
Dr. Rogers, I would now like to talk about what happened after the walkthrough. At 12:30, you got a code blue radio call, yes?
Yes, an unconscious racer.
But Storm Chase did have an injury code system in place, didn't they?
Yes, they did.
And after you got this code blue, you rushed to the scene, correct?
As my job, yes.
And when you got there, Mr. DeSafios had been retrieved from the pit, correct?
Correct.
Dr. Rogers, you also had an AED at your disposal on the golf cart you arrived on, yes?
That's correct, yes.
And the ambulance had arrived while you were resuscitating Mr. DeSafios, didn't it?
That's correct. We had to check for a pulse, and we had to use an AED on Mr. DeSafios.
And Dr. Rogers, it was you that was able to get the pulse from Mr. DeSafios, correct?
No, thanks to Devin Cody, he wasn't doing any rescue breaths, which are kind of vital after a participant has been starved of oxygen.
And Dr. Rogers, when you accompanied Mr. DeSafios in the ambulance, he was admitted into the hospital right away.
Yes, right into the intensive care unit, and we had to place him on cardiac monitor and a ventilator.
And speaking of the ER visits, there were a total of 31 people from the Storm Chase event that went to the ER, correct?
That's correct.
And in total, there were 2,500 participants, weren't there?
That is correct, yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to take judicial notice that the percentage of ER visits to participants, to that total number of participants, was around 1.2%.
Any response or objection to the request for judicial notice of the math?
No, Your Honor.
All right.
No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
All right. Any redirect?
Briefly, Your Honor. Dr. Rogers, was there any medical care that participants could receive at the court?
Yes, if any of their injuries became serious enough, they would have to step off the race into a series of triage tents on the course.
And how serious would it have to be for them to go to the ER?
Well, for the ER, it would have been anything that we couldn't have covered actually at the tents and would have required extra equipment not stationed on the course.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Any recross?
None, Your Honor.
All right. May this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Next witness?
The plaintiff called Mr. DJ Hatchett to the stand.
May I proceed, Your Honor? Please state your name and age for the court.
My name is DJ Hatchett, and I know I don't look it, but I'm 49 years old.
Now, Mr. Hatchett, what do you do for a living?
I am an obstacle course reviewer, designer, and advisor. I'm also the head director of NORA.
What is NORA?
NORA is an association I founded myself. It stands for the National Obstacle Racing Association.
What sort of experience do you have in extreme obstacles?
I've worked with a multitude of obstacles and their designers. I've advised people like Spartan Race and Spartan Race and Tough Mudder on their designs, and I've also been the event director for Warrior Dash.
How else has your experience been recognized on professional levels?
I have been used as a subject matter expert for Boise University on their sports administration major. And on top of that, I am collaborating with a professor of sports law on a few chapters of a book that she's writing.
let's go back to NORA. What exactly does NORA do?
As I said, NORA is the National Obstacle Racing Association. What we try to do is unify health and safety protocols across the nation for obstacle courses.
And why is this important?
Well, obstacle racing is a growing sport in which people are, and if you're to reach the potential that I see that it has, there has to be certain health and safety guidelines in place so that each participant can be assured of their safety when they partake in such obstacle races.
So do you work with Kristen Pesto through NORA?
No, I do not.
Why not?
Well, I have tried before. For about 10 years now, I've been coming to her about safety reforms and certain hazards that I've seen in a race. But each time I've talked to her about this and offered my services, she has turned me down flat.
So if you don't work with Kristen Pesto, why are you here today?
Because I was there a few days prior to the race and I toured the race. And in addition to that, I was hired by the plaintiff to conduct an investigation concerning the events that happened on the day of the race.
What sort of techniques do you use in an investigation?
When I investigate something, I usually go to the site of the race. I interview participants that were eyewitnesses to the events that occurred, and I also go to social media posts pertaining to the day of the race.
Did you use such techniques in your investigation and questions today?
Yes, I did.
So what were the findings of your investigation?
I found that Storm Chase had packed far too many obstacles into the race for the length of race that they had. They had a distinct lack of spectator areas, and then also the obstacle abandoned ship in its entirety was completely reckless, both in design and in placement.
Now you mentioned too many obstacles. Can you explain what this means for the jury?
Well, the general rule of thumb is for you to have an obstacle, then you have a mile, then you have another obstacle. What this does is it gives your body enough time to rest, specifically your upper body, so that by the time you come to the next obstacle, you have enough energy reserves to safely surmount it.
And what did Storm Chase have?
Storm Chase had a 12-mile long obstacle with 22 obstacles in it. That's nearly double the recommended amount.
Now you also mentioned a lack of spectator racer areas. What does this mean?
Well, as I said, obstacle racing is a growing sport, and so with a sport like this, you have people that like to come out and observe it. But in order to do that safely, you have to have distinct areas for spectators to stay apart from the participants.
And what sort of problems does having a lack of spectator areas and too many obstacles cause for the obstacle?
Well, both of these can add to course congestion. If the spectator area's lines are in any way ambiguous, then spectators can easily join the race with no buy-in, no screening, and they add strain to the already weak course monitors.
Are you aware of any protocols Storm Chase had for congestion?
I was aware of one that they had tried to implement, but based off my investigation, I learned that they failed to properly inform their participants.
Objection,
on
Your
how it
Honor.
worked.
As the knowledge gained through hearsay.
Response?
Your Honor, if sufficient foundation has been laid to show that Mr. Hatchett is an expert in obstacle course safety and design, and as per Rule 703, experts can testify as to an opinion on a matter gained through investigation without giving the reasons or facts that their matter is based off of.
Response?
Your Honor, I do not believe that this witness was entered as an exhibit or having any credentials in journalism or investigation, and therefore he cannot testify as to knowledge that he has gained through these interviews.
I'm going to overrule the objection.
Would you like me to repeat the question, Mr. Hatchett?
Yes, please.
Are you aware of any protocols that Storm Chase had to deal with congestion?
Yes, as I said, they had this flag system that they had tried to implement, but based off my investigation, I'd say that they did a poor job of informing the participants about the rules pertaining to this flag system.
Now, you also mentioned abandoned ship. What sort of problems did it have?
Well, their problems for the abandoned ship were twofold. First off, in design, there was no safety railing on the top, so you could easily be pushed off. There was no lane dividers for people to jump off into the water. The pool was too deep, and also in placement, it was a water feature obstacle placed at the tail end of the race, meaning in order to get past this obstacle, it requires an immense amount of energy.
Now, let's go back to NORA for a second. Do you use any sort of national standards when establishing rules?
Yes.
What sort of standards?
We rely on already inset national standards such as the National Lifesaving Association or the the National Lifeguarding Manual and the Red Cross Lifesaving Manual.
So, what does a company such as NORA require for abandoned ship?
We outline the steps and the action required to react to the report of a missing person.
What are those steps?
Well, first off, you should have immediate surface dives by lifeguards. You should have enough of these lifeguards that they can see or touch each other in a line in the case of muddy water, which abandoned ship had. And they should all be equipped with masks and fins, and there should be a scuba tank on site.
And did abandoned ship have any of these requirements?
No, they did not.
Now, did you formulate a conclusion to your investigation?
Yes, I did.
What is that conclusion?
I concluded that Storm Chase had presented an unreasonable amount of hazards to its participants, and in addition to that, they made the required response time of 2 to 3 minutes impossible.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Cross?
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Hatchett, you mentioned an organization called NORA, didn't you?
Yes, sir?
And to be clear, this is an organization that you founded, isn't it?
Yes.
And the goal of this organization is to create consistency in race design and safety protocol, isn't it?
Yeah, as I said, obstacle racing is a growing sport, and there's no national governing body to ensure certain safety protocols for these obstacle races.
So just now you mentioned there's no national governing body.
There's no national governing body, and that's what NORA tries to do.
But the industry as a whole hasn't signed on to NORA, have they?
Not as a whole, no, but I do have many obstacle people who are coming to me and willing to participate in our association.
But to be clear, there are not industry standards agreed upon by all or even most of the obstacle course companies in the industry as a whole, correct?
Yes.
Compound question.
Response?
Your Honor, I was asking one question, that there were no industry standards agreed upon by the companies as a whole. I do not believe that was that confusing the witness.
All right, overruled.
Could you state it, please?
There are no industry standards agreed upon by all or even most of the industry companies in the industry as a whole, correct?
Yes, there are rules that each course likes to follow, but again, these rules are very subjective.
So, you are coming to court today trying to hold Storm Chase liable for your mere opinion, correct?
No, there's national standards that aren't set that most people are already held to, and it's
Mr. Hatchett, I believe you just testified that there is no national governing body.
not specifically for obstacle races, but there are already inset standards for health and safety.
Now, Mr. Hatchett, you believe yourself to be an expert in OCRs, isn't that right?
Yes, I do.
And you would require that participants should train for the full distances of the courses they will be running, isn't that true?
Yeah, I mean, if obstacle races can vary from 1 to 13 miles or even 5Ks. So, I mean, if you can't even walk 13 miles, I wouldn't encourage you to sign up for a race in which you have to run across obstacles for 13
So Storm Chase's length of their course was a normal length, in your opinion, correct?
I'd say the length of their race was, it didn't really have the concern, show any concern to me. My concern was with how many obstacles they tried to jam into that length.
Now, Mr. Hatchett, you believe that there are also no standardized obstacles in the industry as a whole, is that true?
No, there are no standardized obstacles. No.
And you believe that obstacle course companies will have obstacles that a participant cannot get through without help, correct?
I don't think that's necessarily true. There's obstacles in which OCRs would like to encourage teamwork. That's why you have people signing up as groups. And so it may make one obstacle easier than the last if you have someone helping you up a cargo net or helping you climb a rope. But as a general rule of thumb, I wouldn't say that's always true.
But Mr. Hatchett, you would recommend that teamwork is necessary for
Yes, I would encourage teamwork, yes.
Now, Mr. Hatchett, you believe that participants are in charge of their own safety, is that correct?
Yeah, I encourage people to practice safe racing, and you have to be able to. You can't always control all the variables, so you have to do what you can to be safe in these races.
And you would call this defensive racing, as in comparing it to defensive driving, isn't that true?
Yes.
And a way that participants are responsible for their own safety is that they should not show up on a race day completely unprepared. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, as I said, you shouldn't be completely ignorant of what sort of obstacle you're getting into.
And you would believe that participants should train for a minimum of 1 month. Is that correct?
Yes, they should be training for about a month just to prepare, but it really depends on your background. If you're already an athlete, I don't think that's necessarily true.
Mr. Hatch, is your testimony today that you do not believe participants should train for a minimum of 1 month across the board?
No. It depends. I'd say, as a good rule of thumb, yeah, about a month prior to sufficiently trained for your obstacle race. But I mean, if you're already someone like an athlete who runs marathons for a living, you're already always training. And so I think, yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Hatchett, you weren't there the day of the race, October 23rd, were you?
No, but I was there October 20th, in which I toured the course. I took notes from my blog, and I also conducted an interview, which I conducted an investigation in which I interviewed participants who were there on the day of the race.
Now, about these interviews, you never interviewed Chris Tempesto, the CEO of Storm Chase. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you never interviewed any of the head management at Storm Chase, correct?
That's correct.
So all of the knowledge you are providing today has nothing to do with the inner workings of Storm Chase, correct?
That's right. My investigation was based off of eyewitnesses that were there on the day of the race and saw the events that happened.
Thank you. No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. May I inquire how much time I have remaining? 8 seconds. May I proceed? Mr. Hatchett, have you talked with Kristen Pesto and Devin Cody about your concerns?
Yes, I have. I've talked to Kristen Pesto for about 10 years now, both in writing and in person, about safety concerns.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
All right. Any redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor.
May this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Any other witnesses for the defense?
The defense rests, Your Honor.
All right. Or, sorry, the plaintiff. I'm sure the defense has some witnesses it would like to call. Defense, are you ready to call your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense would call Izzy Cameron to the stand. May I proceed, Your Honor? Could you please tell us your name?
My name is Izzy Cameron.
And what is your occupation?
Well, formerly, I was a sports therapist, and a pretty good one, too. I had high school athletes and college athletes all reaching out to work with me. And, well, I'm retired now. And let's just say I've got that senior citizen discount.
Ms. Cameron, how are you related in today's case?
Well, I actually volunteered to be a team monitor for Storm Chase. And so I was put in charge of the 1020 cohort, which included the bog turtle team.
Did you feel prepared for this role as a monitor?
Absolutely. Chris ensured that we all had adequate training, plus my 40 years of experience as a sports therapist, as well as I spent hours on the YouTube going over old video footage from past events to brush up on my knowledge of obstacle courses.
So could any participant have watched these videos to prepare?
I mean, I would say so. I'm not the most tech savvy, but even I was able to find these videos.
Now, Ms. Cameron, we're going to talk about the day of the event itself. How did the day start?
Well, I was excited, drinking coffee, waiting for 10:20 to roll around and for my participants to start showing up. Almost all of them got there right on time, except for the bog turtle team. They got there a little bit later.
And what were your first impressions of the bog turtle team?
Well, they weren't great. First off, they got there a little late. And secondly, I'd been radioed by an event monitor who said that they seemed a bit off and I should keep an eye on them.
Now, once everyone showed up, what was your job?
Well, my job was to read the teams a script which included the do's and don'ts of the course. Then I read them a pledge that they needed to sign, and I was supposed to keep an eye out for general safety along the course.
When you read this pledge, did the participants appear to listen?
Most of them did, except for the bog turtle team, and specifically Alejandro. He was actually trying to talk over me, even making rude comments while I was reading them these important documents. But that didn't stop me from reading every last word.
Let the record reflect I'm approaching opposing counsel with what has been previously entered as Exhibit 3.
All right.
May I approach the witness?
I already have a copy.
Your Honor, I move that this exhibit be published to the jury for illustrative purposes.
You may.
Would you like a copy, Your Honor?
No, thank you.
Now, Ms. Chairman, could you please turn to the third point on Exhibit 3?
Yes,
Could you please read that point as the jury follows along?
I understand that this is not a race, but a personal challenge to overcome obstacles put in my way.
Now, could you please read the sixth point as the jury follows along?
Yes. By signing this pledge, I agree to proceed at my own risk. All risks are assumed by me, the participant.
Now, Ms. Cameron, according to your observations, how did the Bog Turtle team treat the event?
Well, from my observation, they seemed to be acting as if it was a race. They were kind of pushing and shoving their way through obstacles, and it seemed to me like they were trying to get the best time.
Did you remind them that it was not, in fact, a race?
I did. I reminded Alejandro specifically that it wasn't a race and it was okay to skip obstacles.
And did Alejandro listen to you?
No, he didn't.
Ms. Cameron, were there unnecessary risks that you saw Alejandro or his team take, in your opinion?
Yes, I would say so. Specifically, what comes to mind is the cyclone obstacle. The whole team was a little bit beat up and bruised, but on this obstacle, Alejandro hit his head. So I advised him to skip obstacles or to step out, but he didn't listen.
Were you present during the accident on abandoned ship?
Yes, I was standing right by the pool of water.
What led up to Alejandro jumping?
Well, the whole team climbed up the cargo net, and they got to the top of the platform. And it was at this point that the monitor waved the red flag, which I had informed the teams meant they needed to stop.
And did Alejandro stop at the red flag?
No, he didn't.
What happened after the red flag was thrown up?
Well, I was watching my team, and I saw Alejandro push and shove his way to the front.
So, to clarify for the jury, Alejandro Desafios pushed and shoved his way to the front of the platform.
Yes,
And then he jumped off.
yes.
Were there lifeguards at the water?
There were at least two.
What were they doing?
Well, one of them was actually helping a struggling swimmer to shore, and the other, after Alejandro had jumped in, was actually being yelled at by a bog turtle team member. And this lifeguard was Devin Cody. And from what I could see, she just acted very calm and collected in her mannerisms. She put on her goggles and immediately began clearing the pool of participants.
Now, what happened after that?
Well, she dove in and was able to retrieve Alejandro. Some more medical help arrived. They started CPR, put him in an ambulance, and from what I know, went to the ER.
Ms. Kiernan, were there choices that could have been made throughout the day that could have prevented the death?
Objection, Your Honor, is to speculation.
May I respond, Your
You
Honor?
may.
Your Honor, this witness was assigned as a monitor to the bog turtle team and was instructed to keep an eye out for aggressive behavior, remind them of the rules, and just overall watch the team as they completed the course. Therefore, I think it is perfectly allowed for this witness to testify as to what she saw the teams do and how that may have impacted what happened on the day of the course.
Anything further on the objection?
Yes, Your Honor, this witness is speculating the state of mind of these participants and asking what could they have done.
May I respond, Your Honor?
You may.
My question was not asking the witness to try and get inside the head of Alejandro Desafios or his team, merely her observations of the choices that the team made as she observed.
So you are asking her about choices that others made,
Yes, Your Honor.
as opposed to her own choices?
Yes, Your Honor.
I think she can answer generally choices that participants could make in terms of participating in the obstacle course, but nothing specific to any particular individual. So I don't know if that counts as overruled or sustained, but it's a limitation on the question that will be allowed. Did you want to respond further?
No, I stand by that objection.
Okay.
Ms. Kierman, what did you observe your team do during the race?
Well, what I first saw them do was they didn't appear to listen to my instructions, both at the beginning of the race and then during when I talked to individual people. I also saw Alejandro specifically push and shove on the top of the obstacle course. What I know is that we have a lot of procedure in place at Storm Chase to protect people, but we can't control the choices of participants.
Thank you. No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Cross?
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, may I proceed? Now, we heard on direct that prior to starting this race, you received instructions about course and safety protocols, didn't you?
I did, yes.
But what we didn't hear was that this training was only around 10 minutes, correct?
I believe that was the time of direct instruction, yes.
Now, as a team monitor, you had a couple of responsibilities, correct?
I did.
And one of these responsibilities was to look out for unsafe or aggressive participants, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
But you noticed that the Xenopharm team was acting particularly aggressive, correct?
I didn't see anyone crossing any lines that I would make to disqualify anyone.
But Storm Chase had given you no authority to remove aggressive participants, correct?
No, I could have told the participants that they needed to leave.
But did you tell them to leave?
Like I said, I didn't see anyone crossing any particular lines.
But as you just testified, these participants were acting particularly aggressive.
Yes, but there's still a line that needs to be crossed.
Now, let's talk about the Bog Turtle team. You explained some safety protocols and safety precautions to them, correct?
Yes, in the form of both the do's and don'ts of the course, as well as the pledge.
But the Bog Turtle team acted as if they were not paying attention, were they?
That is correct.
But despite this, you still flew through these instructions, didn't you?
I did go through all the instructions, yes.
Now let's continue talking about the Bog Turtle team. You witnessed this team sustain multiple injuries, didn't you?
I did, yes.
In fact, you witnessed Mr. DeSofios sustain a head injury that left him dazed, correct?
I did, and that's when I reminded him that he could skip obstacles.
And Storm Chase had given you no authority to require participants to seek medical attention, correct?
That's right, that was his choice to not seek medical help.
And this team still continued to run throughout the course, correct?
Despite my advice, they still continued.
Now let's talk a little bit about abandoned ship. You can see that this obstacle was overcrowded, correct?
I could, yes.
And you can see that the team monitors were trying to control the crowds, correct?
Yes, she had the red flag in the air.
Now let's talk a little bit about the end of the race. Chris asked you how the race had gone, didn't he?
He did, yes.
And you said that the event had been well organized, didn't you?
I did, yes.
But this wasn't 100% of the truth, was it?
No, it wasn't.
So it's your testimony that this was not 100% of the truth?
It wasn't the full truth, but it was what I believed at the time.
Okay. In fact, this is what Mr. Tempesto wanted to hear, wasn't it?
It probably was.
Objection, Your Honor, it's speculation. Opposing counsel was asking my witness to get inside the mindset of Chris Tempesto.
Response?
A moment to confer with co-counsel.
Go ahead.
Your Honor, I'm not asking this witness to testify to the state of mind, but rather the reasons which she testified that she did not give 100% of the truth to Mr. Tempesto.
May I respond, Your Honor?
You may.
I believe that the opposing counsel's question was that this was what Chris Tempesto wanted, therefore asking my witness to testify as to the mindset of Mr. Tempesto.
So I would allow the question if that's what she thought that Mr. Tempesto wanted to hear, and that's why she said it. So rather than a testimony about what he thought, she can testify to what she thought he wanted to hear.
Okay. Let me rephrase the question. You told Mr. Tempesto what he wanted to hear, didn't you?
I don't know what he wanted to hear.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
All right. Any redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor.
All right. May this witness be excused.
Yes, Your Honor.
Next witness?
Your Honor, at this time, the defense calls Devin Cody to the stand. May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
Would you please introduce yourself to the court?
Of course. My name is Devin Cody, and just like DJ Hatchett, I know I don't look it, but I am 53 years old.
And what is your occupation?
I am currently the Director of Competitor Safety for Storm Chase, which means I work closely with people such as Chris Tempesto or the designers of the course to give my advice on the safety of it. This is especially true for the water obstacles because of my former job.
And what was your former job?
I was a lifeguard and lifeguard instructor for Baywatch. Yes, the Baywatch for 20 years.
What does a typical preparation look like for a storm chase event?
Well, before we even go about designing the course, we make sure to interview and hire local EMT professionals, safety personnel, people of the sort. Our standard to maintain safety is over 50 staff members for every 3,000 participants, which is double what our insurance recommends.
And were all these procedures followed for the October 23rd event?
Of course, we always make sure to follow these procedures. I also instructed Kristen Pesto to hire Dr. Lindsay Rogers specifically for this course to further ensure the safety of our participants.
And what was the setup like for the October 23rd event?
Well, we found a great place here in Idaho called Lizard's Butte, as you guys have heard. And while surveying the land, we came up with some design ideas and held, I believe, 7 or 8 meetings to go over the design of the course itself.
And what was decided after these meetings?
A lot of decisions were made. Some of them definitely pertaining to safety were that we'd have lifeguards and divers at every obstacle of a 4-foot depth or greater that included water or mud. We'd have monitors at every single obstacle, as well as monitors going with the groups themselves, triage tents throughout the course, and ambulances in the parking lot for backup, along with a lot of safety protocols.
Ms. Cody, has anyone ever been hurt at a storm chase event in the past?
Unfortunately, yes. However, we always make sure to get data from these different injuries or incidents, or even if they file complaints with us. And if need be, we will modify or slightly tweak some of the obstacles if we see it is necessary.
And how do you improve the obstacles based off of this data collection?
Well, we try to do just that. We try to improve them, whether that be with safety or even fun, if that is what's necessary. We want to make sure that we maintain this adrenaline-inducing danger, again, danger in quotes, to really just make our participants have as much fun as they can while keeping them safe.
And what would happen if a participant were not able to complete an obstacle?
We give them a small time penalty to just account for the amount of time it would have taken to run that obstacle.
But to clarify, you don't force participants to complete every obstacle.
Of course not. We would never force a participant to complete an obstacle. We always want to make sure that the participants feel safe and ready for every obstacle that they run. So that's why we give them the option to skip out an obstacle or even just sit out for a certain amount of time.
Let's now talk about the day of the event. Where were you on October 23rd, 2022?
I was at the event. I had to be there. I am the director of competitor safety.
And what did you see of the abandoned ship obstacle on this day?
Well, I'd visited the obstacle a couple times. The first time I visited it was about 10:30 a.m. or 11 while I was making my rounds. The obstacle did have a bit of congestion, but that's normal, so I instructed the monitor to be sterner with the participants, and the congestion cleared up at about 11:30 a.m. by the time I visited again.
And are there any ways monitors can specifically ensure the safety of participants?
Well, there's countless ways. We put a lot of safety protocols in place. I believe one of the specific ones at abandoned ship is a flag system that has been mentioned earlier. It's a red-green flag system, so red means stop, green means go. It's intuitive, like a stoplight. We also explain this to the participants before they run the course itself.
And why would it be a problem if someone were to disobey this flag system?
Well, we put these flag systems or different safety protocols in place to ensure the safety of the participants. So if they were to disobey our rules or protocols, then it could result in injury or even death, as we unfortunately did see with Alejandro Desafios.
What did you see of Mr. Desafios before he jumped?
Well, I saw his team make his way to the abandoned ship obstacle while I was a diver there. I had just taken my shift. And when the team came to the obstacle, I saw them make their way up. And I saw actually Alejandro pushing and shoving and even kicking people at the top of the obstacle to, I guess, make his way to the front.
And would you tell the jury what you saw after he jumped?
After he jumped, I was looking at the rest of the participants, and then that's when Tori Damon actually ran up to me and she was telling me that one of the teammates of hers was missing.
And what happened next?
Well, after she screamed at me incoherently about these things and I asked a few vital questions, I clarified and verified that there in fact was a participant missing. So then there was, so I initiated an evacuation of the pool, and I got on the rest of my diving gear and started with the rest of my safety protocol.
And what then?
Well, then as I put on the rest of my diving gear, I also radioed the nearest triage tent to get Dr. Lindsay Rogers on the scene to help me with this. And then I dove in and located Alejandro within about 3 dives, I believe.
And what did you do when you and Mr. DeSafio surfaced?
I immediately administered CPR, and that by the time I was out, Dr. Lindsay Rogers was actually already there prepping the AED, and I think 3 administrations of the AED, which means automatic external defibrillator. We got a heartbeat, and Alejandro was sent to the hospital via an ambulance from the parking lot.
Finally, Ms. Cody, is there anything you would have done differently to avoid this tragedy?
Well, this event wasn't perfect, but I don't think you can ever actually expect perfection. It's impossible. That's, again, why we have the participants sign a waiver. So I would say that my team did all that we could to prevent any injury, and especially given that participants were disobeying our rules, such as the flag system or other systems that we have in place. But I will say this truly was a tragic accident. And
Objection, Your Honor, this is turning into a narrative.
Response?
Your Honor, I believe Ms. Cody was still answering my question about the tragedy that occurred on October 23rd.
I'm going to sustain the objection if you can ask another question.
Ms. Cody, would you please just clarify what you would have done differently to avoid this tragedy?
as I was saying, I wouldn't have done anything differently. I think we did all that we could. It was truly a tragic accident, though, and may he rest in peace.
Thank you, Ms. Cody. Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time.
All right. Cross?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed? On the day of the race, you noticed that the abandoned ship obstacle was extremely crowded, right?
It was a bit congested, but that is to be expected for our obstacle courses.
And the monitor that was trying to keep the crowds in check was only 19, correct?
I did not know the exact age, but I believe that she was a younger adult.
It's your testimony today that you did not know the monitor's age?
I believe that she was about 18 or 19, but I did not know her exact age.
And you called Chris Pesto about this problem with the congestion, right?
Yes, I did.
And as the director of competitive safety for Storm Chase, you asked him if he wanted to shut it down, right?
Yes, I was just trying to get his opinion on it.
And Chris Pesto told you to keep the obstacle running anyway, didn't he?
Yes, I believe the congestion cleared up, so I think he was right.
But this decision surprised you, didn't it?
Initially it did, but as I said, the congestion did clear up, so he was correct.
But Miss Cody, Mr. DeSafio's accident happened on this obstacle, isn't that right?
Much later, it wasn't within this batch of participants going through, but yes, at this obstacle.
Let's talk about the abandoned ship incident. It started when Mr. DeSafio jumped into the water and didn't come up, right?
Yes, I mean, before that, he was also pushing and shoving and kicking, but it did start once he entered the water.
And you were not aware of this until one of his teammates, Tori Damon, came and told you, right?
Yes, I had to be made aware, but again, I was also looking at other participants.
And when Miss Damon told you, she seemed very upset, didn't she?
Yes, she was screaming at me incoherently.
And Miss Cody, the key to saving someone is quick action, right?
Yes, we took as quick of action as we could.
But when you were informed of Mr. DeSafio's disappearance, the first thing you did was to start asking Miss Damon questions, right?
I had to get a good grasp on the situation. If I just went into the pool without knowing what happened, I don't think it would have been a safe situation for me or Alejandro.
And you specifically asked whether Mr. DeSafio was still in the pool or if he had exited the obstacle somewhere else, right?
Yes, I had to make sure that was true.
After talking to Tori Damon, you radioed the monitor at the top of the obstacle to tell her to stop participants from jumping off, right?
Yes.
But, Miss Cody, you were aware that this monitor was already holding up a red flag, isn't that right?
She, I believe, was holding up a red flag to signal for the participants to stop, yes.
And after radioing the monitor, you radioed the CEO of Storm Chase at the HQ today, right?
I was just checking with Chris Tempesto to make sure he was aware of the situation, yes?
But Ms. Cody, in these kind of situations, every second counts. Isn't that true?
Yes, every second counts, but that is also true for my own safety. So I have to make sure that other safety personnel are aware of my situation.
And after radioing the CEO of Storm Chase, you tried to organize the people that were standing by the edge of the pool, right?
Again, I had to make sure that people weren't going to jump in on top of me.
But you're the designated rescue diver for this obstacle, aren't you?
Yes, I was at that time. I had taken my shift.
And the specific reason that you tried to organize these people was so that you could ask them questions. Isn't that true?
I believe it was after I had already dove in, but I did in fact try to make sure that they were out of my way so that I could take control of the situation.
Well, let me clarify. Before diving for Mission Desafios, after you had organized the people standing by the edge of the pool, then you started asking them questions, right?
I think I asked maybe 1 or 2 questions, again, to get a good grasp in the situation. I think it should be made clear, I had to make sure I was safe as well as Alejandro before I was able to jump into the pool.
But the questions that you asked these participants, you specifically asked them to account for all of their teammates, right?
Again, I had to make sure that Alejandro hadn't just exited before, so that I wasn't uselessly clearing the pool.
But Ms. Cody, you had already been informed of Mr. Desafio's disappearance by Ms. Damon, isn't that right?
I had one participant come up to me, Miss Damon, tell me that Mr. Desafios was missing, but people can claim that and not know that Mr. Desafios, say, could have exited at a different part of the pool.
And Mr. Desafios still had not surfaced at this point, correct?
Yes, then I was made aware later, a little bit later, that he was in fact still in the pool.
After questioning these participants, then you initiated an evacuation of the pool, correct?
Yes, immediately after I realized the situation.
And after initiating this evacuation, then you radioed the medical team for help, right?
Yes, I needed more help.
So you radioed the medical team for help before you had even started looking for Mr. Desafios, isn't that true?
Well, I had come to the realization that someone was in fact under the water, so I assumed that I might need some help from someone else, such as Dr. Lindsay Rogers, so I wanted to be prepared.
Ms. Cody, I didn't ask for your reasoning behind this action. I merely asked if you radioed for medical help before you had started looking for Mr. Desafios, and that's a yes, isn't it?
Yes.
And finally, after all of this, then you started diving for Mr. Desafios, correct?
Yes, I believe about maybe, I think less than 2 or 3 minutes had elapsed throughout this time period.
And after you had started diving, it took you 2 to 3 dives to find him, correct?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Redirect?
Yes, Your Honor, briefly. May I proceed? Ms. Cody, did all these steps taken get Mr. Desafios to the hospital with a pulse?
Yes, they did.
Thank you. No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Recross.
No recross, Your Honor.
May this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Next witness?
Yes, Your Honor, the defense calls Chris Tempesto to the stand. And before I begin, might I inquire as to the time I have remaining?
Yes.
Permission to proceed? Please introduce yourself to the court.
My name is Chris Tempesto.
And what is your occupation?
I'm the founder and CEO of Storm Chase LLC.
What is Storm Chase?
Storm Chase is, simply put, an obstacle course racing company. However, it's honestly more than just a company. We design physically and mentally challenging courses that are just as thrilling as they are rewarding.
How important is safety to your company?
Safety is incredibly important, and we take it very seriously. Without it, you can't put on a challenging event like this. Storm Chase adheres to all safety regulations required by state laws, federal laws, and our insurance policy.
Are there any protocols that your company has for its employees to make this course safe?
Yes, each of our employees is given a minimum of 1 walkie-talkie with which they can update us on the status of the course. Medical personnel have an additional walkie-talkie with which they can notify us of any medical emergencies they're having. A monitor also goes with each team, normally some sort of ex-military, retired police officer, retired firefighter, ex-athlete individual who understands dangerous situations.
Are there any general safety protocols that Storm Chase adheres to?
Yes, each team is given a designated launch time within which they have to show up in order to reduce congestion on the course. We also adhere to all state laws and federal laws when hiring teams of lifeguards and medical personnel, and ambulances are available on call from the parking lot.
How do you know your courses are safe for the participants?
All courses are safety and security approved by a team of structural engineers and then built by certified general contractors. Weight testing, implementing fall prevention, and general run-throughs, super fun by the way, are all general procedure for Storm Chase.
Mr. Tempesto, in your opinion, would you say that a Storm Chase event is dangerous?
There's going to be an element of danger, but it's never meant to be hazardous.
Could you please explain to the jury what element of danger you are talking about?
There's an element of danger in any recreational activity. It's no different than going skiing or skateboarding or rock climbing or whatever. Death is never the expectation, but it's still a possibility.
So then, Mr. Tempesto, why not just remove the possibility of death altogether?
Well, our participants aren't paying to go take a walk in the park. Without the calculated risk, the courses are no longer fun. It's the perception of danger that draws most of our participants.
How much of a commitment is participating in one of these events?
It's no casual commitment. Our courses are designed to be physically challenging, and we make this abundantly clear to our participants.
How are the elements of the race communicated to its participants?
We communicate the elements of our courses in 5 different ways. First, they're laid out on our website. Second, there's a verbal briefing prior to the event. Third, they're also laid out in our pledge. Fourth, they're laid out in our waiver. And finally, the conditions of the waiver are verified upon checking out the course.
Why does Storm Chase have so many of these commitment reminders?
We have so many reminders to ensure that participants have a duty in knowing what they're getting themselves into.
Now, earlier in your testimony, you mentioned a waiver. Do all participants have to sign this document before racing?
Yes, they do.
I believe you have this document in front of you.
Yes.
To start off, Mr. Tempesto, could you please explain to the jury the purpose this waiver serves for your company?
The purpose of this waiver is to inform and prepare our participants on how to run through the course safely, as well as make them aware of the responsibilities of Storm Chase.
I would first like to discuss duty of personal safety. On the second page, could you please read aloud the third and fourth sentences in the second column, starting with the words, "I understand"?
Yes, it starts right here. I understand that it is my responsibility to inspect the course, facilities, equipment, and areas to be used, and if I believe or become aware that any are unsafe or pose unreasonable risk, I agree to immediately notify appropriate personnel. By participating in the event, I am acknowledging that I have found the course, facilities, equipment, and areas to be used to be safe and acceptable for participation.
What other responsibilities do the participants have?
In the waiver, we also recommend that all of our participants get medical clearance prior to the event, and participants are also responsible for assessing their own mental and physical limitations before and during the event.
Could you please show the jury where this appears in the waiver?
Yes, this appears on the 4th page, 5th bullet point down. It reads, I understand that it is my responsibility to continuously monitor my own physical and mental condition during the course, and I agree to withdraw immediately and notify appropriate personnel if at any point my continued participation would create a risk of danger to myself or to others.
Now, Mr. Tempesto, does this waiver mention that death could result from engaging in the event?
Yes, it's still a possibility.
Could you please show the jury where this appears in the waiver?
This appears on the 2nd page of our waiver.
Why would Storm Chase have such an ominous reminder in a waiver?
Death is never the expectation, but it's still a possibility. Mr. DeSofios' death was a tragic accident, but it was just that, an accident. Our job was to do everything that we could, and we did. It's impossible to remove risk entirely. That's why we have our participants sign a waiver. It's truly terrible. Our thoughts and prayers are with his family.
And just to clarify, did Mr. DeSofios sign off on this possibility?
Yes, he did.
Thank you. No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
All right. Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
Now, Mr. Tempesto, I believe you have Exhibit 9 in front of you. Can you please refer to that?
Yes,
Now, I'm going to read the title of this exhibit. On course, Medical 10 Treatment Log Summary. I read that correctly, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
Now, all these injuries are recorded in medical tents beside your racetrack, correct?
Yes, they are.
Now, I'm going to read some of the more serious injuries off this list. Please read along silently as I read aloud. For medical tent 1, we have 4 cases of frostbite, 15 eye injuries, and 4 total concussions. I read that correctly, didn't I?
It's taking me a second to find all of it. I believe so.
Now, for medical tent 2, we have 8 cases of frostbite. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
Medical tent 3, we have 18 more cases of frostbite, 10 second-degree burns, and a third-degree burn. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
For medical tent 4, we have 3 more concussions and a case of rabies. Did I read that correctly?
Objection, Your Honor, as to relevance.
Response?
Your Honor, opposing counsel and testimony by opposing counsel witnesses has gone to show that their race is safe. This record is establishing a pattern of negligence of more serious injuries, which their waiver stipulates as less common.
Permission to respond? Your Honor, there are many different causes as to what could result in an injury. Therefore, I do not believe that specific injuries indicate negligence as they could have been, say, an accident. Therefore, I believe that talking about other injuries, regardless of what happened on the abandoned ship, are irrelevant.
Objection is overruled.
Would you like me to continue, Mr. Pesto?
Could you repeat the last one? I found one of them, I believe, but...
Of course, Mr. Pesto. For medical tent 4, we have 3 concussions and a case of rabies. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
And finally, for medical tent 5, we have 29 severe contusions, 5 broken bones, and the drowning death of Mr. Desafios. I read that correctly, didn't I?
Yes, tragically, yes.
Now, you are aware there's well over 500 injuries on this list.
Yes, but they could have been suffered by the same participant.
Now, but nowhere on this does it say that it is suffered by the same participant, does it, Mr. Pesto?
Nowhere on this does it say that it was suffered by different participants.
Now, Mr. Pesto, I would like to talk about the number of participants in your race. You sold out your race at 2,500 participants, correct?
Yes, we did.
And you also sold out the number of spectators in participants, correct?
Yes.
And this is an unusually large number for you, isn't that right?
Yes, I believe so.
And you thought this was a good thing because you needed the money, isn't that right?
Well, it was a good thing because it meant that more people were willing to come to our races, experience a wonderful obstacle course, and just have a good time.
Now, with 2,500 participants and 500 injuries, the ratio to injuries to participants is 20%, isn't that right?
Could you clarify?
Of course. The ratio of 500 to 2,500 is 20%, correct?
I believe so, around that much.
So, bringing back to my question, the ratio of 500 injuries to 2,500 participants is 20%, isn't that right?
Yes, but once again, these may have been suffered by the same participant. It may not have been
Bringing me back to
different.
my question, I'm merely asking about the ratio of injuries to participants, and that is 20%, isn't that right?
I don't believe that that ratio accurately represents the amount of injuries on our course.
Do you believe that this medical tents do not faithfully report injuries?
I believe they do, but I believe this is not an accurate representation of what injuries each participant sustained.
That's fine, I'm not asking you about that. Now, let's move on to the day of the race, Mr. Pesto. Isn't it true you chose not to shut down abandoned ship, even though there was rising levels of congestion?
I believe I told Devin Cody not to shut it down for the whole day, but I trusted Devin Cody to shut it down if she saw fit.
But bringing back to my question, isn't it true that you chose not to shut it down? Isn't that right?
It was not I trust my employees to shut things down when they see fit.
But bringing back to my question, Mr. Pesto, you chose not to shut it down. That's a yes.
It was not. I was not the one. It's a man in the arena situation. The person there has to shut down the course. I was at the HQ tent, monitoring basically everything all at once. So I had a lot of things going on.
So that's a no. That's a yes. You did not choose to shut down the obstacle, correct?
I personally did not choose to shut down the obstacle.
Now, you don't have any system for removing participants from the course. Isn't that right?
I believe we do.
Is your testimony today that you have a system for removing people from the course?
I believe that all of our monitors are able to remove the people from the course if they see fit. I believe this is stipulated in our waiver.
But you were in court today when Ms. Cameron testified that you didn't give her the authority to remove participants in the course.
I don't believe that's what she was saying.
Well, that's what she said under oath today, Mr. Tepesta. Now, I would like to read from your waiver a second. I believe you have it in front of you. Now, I'd like to read from page 4. Looking at the bottom right, please read along silently as I read aloud. Removal from course. I understand that Storm Chase LLC and venue personnel may immediately cause anyone who disobeys the rules, directions, instructions, decisions, or laws, or whose behavior endangers the safety or negatively affects a person, facility, or property of any type or kind to be removed from the course. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Now, are you aware that your company invited Ms. Damon and her team to compete in your race?
I believe so.
And you do not require participants to go under any sort of physical test before competing in your race. Isn't that right?
No, in the waiver, we recommend that all participants get medical clearance prior to the event.
And you do not require any participants to undergo any experience checks before your race, correct?
I believe that is for our own the participants to monitor for themselves, as stated in our waiver.
Now, Mr. Tepesto, you knew someone was eventually going to die on your course. Isn't that right?
I was as certain of it as sure as anyone can ever be certain of a possibility.
So I say yes. To your knowledge, you knew someone was going to die on your course, correct?
I cannot foretell the future, so I could not 100% tell whether someone would or wouldn't die.
But you did know that, you knew that someone was going to die. And that's a yes, isn't it?
I didn't know that someone was going to die.
So is your testimony today that you weren't sure if someone was going to die?
I was sure that someone could die on our courses, yes.
Your Honor, I would ask to approach the witness with their testimony for purposes of impeachment.
You can show it to opposing counsel.
Can I see them?
Now, you made a sworn statement before the trial, correct?
Indeed I did.
And in that statement, you chose to be truthful and accurate, correct?
Yes.
And that you had nothing of significance to add to this testimony. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Now, I'm going to direct your line to 101 and 102 of your statement. Now, just to clarify the jury, this is your statement, is it not?
Yes.
Now, please read along silently as I read aloud. Even so, all of us knew that if we were in the business for long enough, someone would eventually die. I read that correctly, didn't I?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Redirect?
1 moment, Your Honor. Before I begin, might I inquire as to the time I have remaining? 44 seconds. Permission to proceed? Could you please explain what you mean by somebody could die on our course eventually?
Somebody could die in this business eventually. It's a risky business. It's an obstacle course business. All participants go into the courses knowing this, and all of the business owners go in to any event knowing this.
And Mr. Tempesto, did you contradict yourself in your statement?
No.
Mr. Tempesto, is 500 injuries the same as 500 people injured?
No.
How many injuries are there on the abandoned ship obstacle?
Pretty disorganized over here. 10.
Thank you. No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
All right. Any recross?
No, Your Honor.
May this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Any other witnesses for the defense?
None, Your Honor.
All right, would the teams like 3 minutes to prepare closing arguments?
Yes,
All right.
Your Honor.
All right, if the timekeepers could set their stopwatches for 3 minutes, please.
Seriously? Okay, so what didn't, they admitted to everything we need to on cross. I'm adding in the 1.2% injury. Jack should have known the 10 injury. Yes, we've talked about this. It's okay.
She told us.
Saying somebody will die is different than saying somebody could die.
It's tricky because in the statement he did say somebody would die, but I think the jury got that.
No, he admitted. Jack literally said, no, we knew eventually somebody would die, and then he went to. Yes.
No, I think that they definitely.
The attorney that's one that choose mine.
Mustache. Yeah, mustache. They really liked it. They loved it. And he was like, oh, don't die. What do you make that? I need to focus really quick. Okay. We can talk later. I need a wet whistle.
I don't think that's as close as
They were better than I thought.
I think they're more comfortable with sports because they actually like us.
It's quiet. Yeah. So he's sassy, so oh, it won't. I'm gonna shut this. Shut this down. So it's alright. I hope he fumbles and then goes. Just disappears.
Last.
You're so good at responding to those little yellow cards. All right, it is time for closing arguments. The plaintiff would like to present the closing argument.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, I request I reserve any remaining time for rebuttal.
Yes.
May I proceed? Your Honor, counsel, members of the jury, on October 23rd, 2022, an unthinkable tragedy occurred. Chris Pesto cut multiple corners, up to the point where he made the executive decision to leave abandoned ship obstacle open. Only a few hours later, Mr. DeSafios suffered irreparable brain damage on that very same obstacle. Some tragedies are not preventable. Some tragedies are inevitable. Some tragedies, there is nothing that could have been done. But we heard today how there was plenty that could have been done in the case of Mr. DeSafios. We, the plaintiff, had the burden of proof today. We had to prove by preponderance of the evidence these following jury instructions. First, that the defendant was negligent, and this negligence was the proximate or main cause of Mr. DeSafios' death. Next, this negligence was reckless, so we must prove that the defendant made a conscious choice as to their conduct and knew or should have known that this choice would lead to unnecessary risk or harm to his participants. We had to prove these things by the preponderance of the evidence, which means at the end of this trial, the evidence weighs even the slightest against the defendant, you must find in our favor. To prove these things, we heard from 3 witnesses. First, Tori Damon took the stand and told you the story of the race. We heard how the course was crowded, the instructions useless, and the obstacles ridiculously unsafe. From her testimony and DJ Hatch's, we learned that Storm Chase inadequately informed participants of the rules of their race and did not enforce them. Next, Dr. Lindsay Rogers exposed the many health shortcomings that Storm Chase's race had. Despite his concerns on obstacle safety and staff, Storm Chase chose to ignore him. Finally, Mr. DJ Hatchett gave his conclusion to his expert investigation on Storm Chase's race. From overcrowding to abandoned ship, too many obstacles and too many participants, it is clear that Storm Chase's race was founded in gross negligence that led to the death of Mr. DeSofios. At the scene of this accident, you heard how Devin Cody took her time in a shoddy response, asking redundant questions, doing useless head counts, all the while Mr. DeSofios died in the muddy water while she cared more about her own safety than the drowning man. And Storm Chase should have known to stop all of this, receiving years of advice from Mr. DJ Hatchett and advice from Dr. Rogers about the safety concerns about their race. But just as they chose to ignore this advice, so did they choose to ignore the very signs of dangerous congestion on the day of the race. Despite abandoned ship being congested, Devin Cody made the decision to leave it open against her better judgment, following the advice of Mr. Tempesto. Only a few hours later, Mr. DeSofios suffered irreparable brain damage on that very same obstacle. The defense also has a burden of proof today. They must prove that their waiver defends them, the very waiver they themselves did not force the rules to. This waiver is dependent on Jury Instruction 6, which states that they have the duty to provide ordinary care to their participants. Your Honor, counsel, members of the jury, let me ask you this. Would an ordinary, reasonable person, a person just like you or me, would an ordinary, reasonable person leave out necessary instructions about an important flag system? Would an ordinary person call a race safe that has a 20% injury participant ratio? Would an ordinary person choose to leave a dangerous, congested obstacle open despite telling you on stand here today that he knew someone was eventually going to die? If the answers to any of those questions leans even the slightest towards no, the defense has failed to fulfill their duty. They have failed to defend their waiver. They have broken their own waiver's responsibilities. They have failed their burden of proof, and they have been negligent, proving the plaintiff to be right in today's trial. And so, based on that evidence, I ask you to find in our favor. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Closing argument from the defense.
Yes, Your Honor. Permission to proceed? Your Honor, members of the jury, at the beginning of this trial, you heard about how our lives are fashioned by the choices we make. We are all responsible for personal safety and for making choices in accordance with this duty. But if one chooses not to follow the rules and precautions given to them, then safety is neglected at their own peril. Unfortunately for everyone in this courtroom, Mr. DeSofios' choices led to his own personal harm. But as we have shown today, this tragedy was a terrible accident, not a wrongful death due to the negligence or recklessness of my client. Alternatively, we have shown how Storm Chase made affirmative choices that limited the possibility of death as best they could. In addition to disproving the claims of the plaintiff, we have also proven by a preponderance of the evidence, the affirmative defense provided in Jury Instruction 11, that by signing the waiver, Mr. DeSofios voluntarily assumed the risk of death. We have proven this through three things. First, we have proven that he signed the waiver knowingly and voluntarily. Second, we have shown how the waiver disclosed that death could result from engaging in the activity. And third, we have shown that by signing the waiver, Mr. DeSofios voluntarily assumed this risk of death. But don't just take my word for it. Consider the evidence you've heard in today's trial. You heard from obstacle course monitor Izzy Cameron. She testified how Alejandro made poor choices throughout the event. He continued racing after sustaining a head injury, didn't listen to her instructions about skipping obstacles, and ultimately made poor choices on abandoned ship, such as disobeying the flag system. Next, you heard from Devin Cody how Storm Chase prioritizes safety in regards to their emergency protocols. As Cody testified on the stand, Storm Chase collects and uses data to make changes for the sake of participant safety. Finally, you heard from the CEO himself, Chris Tempesto. We have shown with Tempesto how Storm Chase met all of the legal safety standards. In addition, we have shown through Tempesto how all elements of the course and responsibilities of the participants were disclosed in numerous ways, one of them being the waiver that Mr. DeSofios signed. But the evidence doesn't stop there. We have shown with DJ Hatchett that participants are in charge of personal safety. You heard Hatchett admit on the stand that physical training and preparation are necessary to run a race of this sort. With Tori Damon, we showed that this degree of preparation was non-existent. On the day of the race, we saw this lack of training come to fruition in the form of alcoholic drinks and being late. Tori Damon was notified 4 different ways the conditions of the course: the signs, the pledge, the rules that Izzy read, and finally, the waiver. In addition, we have also shown through Dr. Lindsay Rogers that in spite of all his concerns, a government official still approved the race at the safety meeting. The percentage of ER visits was 1.2%, and that the safety protocols that Storm Chase had in place were in fact carried out. Safety codes, course testing, course monitors, medical professionals, AEDs, and general warnings are not the marks of a negligent or reckless company. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the story today is simple. Storm Chase met the safety standard. Safety requires both parties to act responsibly. It is this personal duty of responsibility where, if neglected, leads to imminent danger. To the dismay of everyone in this courtroom, this is exactly what led to Mr. DeSofios' death. Death is never the expectation, but it is still a possibility. And that is something you can't simply skim over. Members of the jury, we have shown that this death wasn't due to the recklessness or negligence of my client. It was a tragic accident. At the beginning of this trial, we had to prove how Mr. DeSofios signed the waiver knowingly and voluntarily. We have done this. We had to prove how the waiver itself disclosed that death could result from engaging in the activity. We have done this. And finally, we have proven that by signing the waiver, Mr. DeSofios voluntarily assumed the risk of death. We have proven all of these. And it is for this reason that we ask you to find Storm Chase, LLC, not liable for the death of Alejandro DeSofios. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any rebuttal argument?
Yes, Your Honor, may I park on the side of me?
You have 51 seconds. Merci. We heard time and time again about Mr. DeSofios' choices. But we also heard how Chris Tempesto invited Mr. DeSofios to compete in his race. We heard how the defense blamed Mr. DeSofios for breaking the rules of their course. But you cannot be held accountable for breaking the law. The law is not consistently enforced. And we heard how Storm Chase LLC did nothing of the kind. Thank you.
All right. Thank you both. I think it's time to join in a round of applause, please. All right. Any timing violations? All right. Any inside the bar violations that either team would like to report?
None, Your Honor.
All right. So we'll give the scoring judges a few minutes to complete their ballots. I will take this opportunity to again thank you all for your hard work and participation in the program and the support of everyone in this courtroom who helped these students get to the championship round today. You all were amazing, amazing. For any of you who are not seniors, I hope to see you back next year. For those of you who are seniors, I hope after whatever you're doing right after high school, at some point it will include law school, and we will see you back here to swear you in as attorneys. So, are our scoring judges done with their time or their ballots? Looks like 3 yeses. Any comments any of you want to give before we turn it over to the final steps? Kel?
Comments in the nature of
Positive reinforcement.
Yeah. You guys all did awesome, and I really can't overstate that. And many of you did much better than adult attorneys who practice in this courtroom who have a bar license. And so ask Chief Judge Laurel, she'll tell you about that. But yeah, really, I do have. Is there any constructive criticism that is sought? Okay, then I will leave it to the 98% positive. You guys did a great job. I think all of the attorneys had really great command of the courtroom, really great presence. You guys are great public speakers. You move around well. All of the witnesses were highly believable. DJ Hatchett, I think you should start a blog on outdoor sports and just start your career there. But yeah, all of you did a wonderful job, and I'm just very blown and impressed with your work. So thank you.
Yeah, I think that I echo a lot of those sentiments. It's a pleasure to be able to sit in here and watch you guys do what you do. I appreciate all the hard work that you guys put into this, coaches, teams, parents, families. It really becomes evident at this point just how hard you guys work. I saw, a great ability to work through the rules of evidence. You guys did a very effective job eliciting testimony, getting your exhibits, and I think that watching you guys is impressive. So I appreciate the opportunity to sit in here and have the opportunity, I guess, to kind of observe that and judge you guys. So congratulations are due, and again, thank you. It was a pleasure.
Marcella.
Yeah, I would echo all of that. I usually give really specific feedback, but I don't have that much today. I think all of you guys really did blow me away. I have to say the witnesses, you guys all did fantastic. I think the spelling out why, one specific piece of feedback I do have, the spelling out why the obstacles were too close. I don't know that I've ever even heard why that was important until this trial today. And I really feel like that framed the argument for that side. And somebody said, "I'm making my formal complaint today." And I thought, wow, yes, I love that. Good job. You are making your formal complaint today. And I thought everybody just did fantastic, really. No notes. Great job.
Carrie.
You made yours already.
I did. I mean, I can.
So before we announce the results from today, I just wanted to actually start by asking you to give our judging panel a round. Just a quick housekeeping announcement. After we announce the results today, we'd like to get pictures of both of the teams, and my staff is here to help with that. And if possible, if we could have the team stand underneath the seal, that would be lovely. So without further ado, today's state runner-up is MXA from the Logos School. And your 2024 state champion is the Ambrose School. all schools and the parents and everybody who supports this program for being here and helping us have another great season.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your
Thank you so much.
so much.